Let's start off with just kind of talking about the excitement of the season. We'll start with Brenden. What's your feeling heading into this season, year 2 of Coach Rule?
I think like everybody else right now, reading into the press, and if you haven't had a chance to be in practice or seen any of what they had out at spring ball, there's a lot of excitement around the quarterback play, certainly. I think going into this season, everybody has read into what Matt Rule has done in his past, whether it was at Baylor, Temple, and he's had a lot of success in the year 2, so I think there's a lot of optimism in thinking that Nebraska's only going to get better this year, and certainly I think so as well. Just personally being around them and seeing them grow through winter conditioning, through spring, and then watching what we've done so far out on the field through fall camp, it's pretty exciting. And that goes for every position, not just the quarterback position. I think our offensive line, we've got some depth there now. We've got a lot of experience. I like our tight end position. It's a good room there. Our receiver core across the board is very talented. We're tall, we're lean, we're fast, we're elusive. So you're going to be very dynamic, I think, on offense. What you'd like to see is a pro-style type of offense, well-balanced, running and throwing the ball. And Dylan, to be honest with you, I thought it was a great competition. Dylan getting here early, I think, helped him, benefited him, but his development is extremely unique in the fact that, the game is played between the years, and it takes years between the years before you develop the confidence to go out on the football field and make really smart decisions. And so you're going to see a quarterback that, I'm thinking is not going to make a lot of mistakes. Certainly he's going to have his growing pains, but we can keep him clean. I think offensively we're going to be pretty good. Okay, and then on the other side, you've got a defense that up front, that front seven is going to be as good as you're going to see in the Big Ten. We've got some defensive backs, in particular Tommy Hill, that could be one of the best in the nation. So, you complement that with an offense that's not putting the ball on the ground and turning it over 31 times, getting some takeaways. We could have an exciting year. Hopefully we make a bowl game. That's the hope.
Yeah, that's the minimum. Speaking to Coach today, that's what he said as well, but feels very optimistic about the season. Along with Rob, of course, being a doctor, you also host the Doc Talk podcast with Travis Justice as well. So you talk about these guys all the time. What's the excitement level for you?
I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I was going to say I was trying to temper expectations.
Contrarian for a second.
I'm a complete optimist. When we played, I was the guy that always wondered how the heck did we not win 4 national titles in a row. Still bugs me. But, there's kind of some little things I look at on the offensive line, and the fact that you've got a guy like Bryce Benhart, who, is a guy that I've been kind of critical of for a big chunk of his career. And I felt last year he kind of turned a corner and hit kind of this level of consistency that was something that I think people had been expecting from him all along. And I thought he really kind of held his own as a Big Ten offensive tackle. And that was something that I liked to see. And the fact that he came back, I thought was, the guy's just a huge human, but that's literally was a huge benefit to that offensive line to have somebody to kind of anchor down that spot. You've got a really consistent center in Ben Scott. You've got somebody that was a pretty solid player when he hit the door. And I thought it was kind of one of the unheralded guys. And the fact that he got a guy locking down. I always thought center was arguably the most important position on offense. And if you've got somebody who's consistent, doesn't make mistakes, makes the calls, doesn't have penalties, as boring as that sounds, that's a huge boon to that offense. It's something I'm excited about, the fact that we got a guy like that, and he's coming back for another year. Again, that's huge for us. Micah Mascua at guard. Here's a guy who's...
Bazooka? Yeah.
Is it Bazooka?
Bazooka, yeah.
Okay.
I talked to him today.
Okay, just making sure. There's like a vowel in there.
I know. It's funny because he's
that you're saying.
Go to any of the websites now.
Okay.
They put the pronunciation and have the kid actually saying it. So Mike and his brother Maurice.
I'm going by what he says because I don't want to piss him off. So, now, correct me if I'm wrong. He got recruited to Baylor by Rule.
By Matt Rule, that's right.
So
he's known him since he was in 8th grade.
Yeah. So you've got a guy that Rule's known forever. He was very good at Baylor. I thought, for a guy to make that NIL jump to Florida and become a starting SEC offensive lineman at Florida, the guy was an absolute brawler there. I was really excited when they got him. I was bummed because I think Nebraska went after him when he hit the portal at Baylor.
He did, yeah.
And I really thought we'd have a chance to get him at Nebraska. I'm glad we finally have for this last season of eligibility he's got. I think that's huge for that offensive line. To get a guy like that in Lincoln, I think is going to be huge. Always worried about that other tackle spot. I worried about it before Teddy got hurt. So that's a spot where if they can kind of solidify that a little bit and just get some consistent play at that left tackle spot, I think that's going to be a really, really good offensive line. And from just having a group of guys that have been kind of these kind of halfway consistent performers in their career is something we haven't had. It's always been kind of this patchwork offensive line the last several years. And I think now we're finally got a chance to see what group of guys that have been together, they've played together for a while, like obviously is kind of a new addition to the mix, but he's a very, very high quality addition to that mix. So, but that, and then you look on defense again, the guys that came back, you've got kind of this core unit of guys that have come back and how well they played for Tony White last year. I don't want to ever chalk it up like, okay, well the defense is going to be fine. There's a lot of work and a lot of what ifs that are going to go into that defense being as good for Nebraska as they were last year. But the fact that Coach White came back, that a lot of the core group of those players are back on that defense is a huge reason to be excited about, because if you can get just a little bit of consistency on offense, a little fewer mistakes in terms of the penalties and the turnovers, all of a sudden there's a lot of close games last year that flip, and all of a sudden they're going to win.
There haven't been a lot of true freshmen starting at quarterback in Nebraska. Obviously, Tommy Frazier, game 6 against Missouri. Adrian Martinez started. Taylor Martinez started as a redshirt. How can the skill guys we know about, how can they help him as a freshman?
I want to go somewhere else first.
Okay, sure, yeah,
just real quick.
We'll save it for later, yeah.
Let me tell you what I'm looking forward to. I really feel like Nebraska has been making headlines in the wrong places. So I'm looking for the president to the AD, down to the coach, be all cohesive. Because I think that when leadership is together and they're all flowing in the right place, I think there's a trickle-down effect, okay? All the way down to the quarterback, okay? Now, to the quarterback.
Yeah.
Over the years, as we've looked at recruiting at Nebraska, if you just go back and pan through, it just really feels like a lot of areas did not work out, particularly in the skill positions. It's just been disheartening. And I remember when Coach Tressel was fired from Ohio State, that was like the last time Nebraska beat Ohio State here. And then Urban Meyer took over that 6-6 team, and they went 12-0, which tells you leadership makes a huge difference. And last year was a really telltale sign that things were going in the right direction. I'm now drinking the Kool-Aid again, because I feel like Coach Rule has started to do things that a leader would do by not only connecting here in Omaha, but he's using his connections outside the state in Texas. You can just see a lot of people starting to get behind him. He's saying the right things, and he's doing the right things. So what he's saying is following up with what he's doing. The only position I feel, sorry fellas, the only position that I feel that can come in and really make a huge impact on a program right away is a quarterback, right? It ain't a tight end, it ain't a running back. It's the quarterback. You can have a terrible line, which we don't. I think we're gonna have a pretty solid line. I think we have pretty solid running backs. And like Stai said, receivers looking really good. But if you got a good leader who's gonna put that young quarterback in good positions to make good decisions, that 5-3 time of the year last year when I'm like, we just need one more to go to a bowl, it's going to be different this year. I think we have an opportunity to really run some games. My Kool-Aid drinking says 6-7-0. I'm sure everybody else has looked at that schedule and said, man, we got potential to do this. And I really feel with Coach Rule, we got a real opportunity to do that because we were right on the cusp of blowing the doors off last year and it just fell apart just because of that one position. And when you have a 5-star quarterback with the tools that he has, as I watched him through the spring and keeping up with him in the fall, I think there's real potential for Nebraska to get back on track.
Yeah, and I think officially we have to call it Rule-Aid. It's not Kool-Aid. I think officially it has to be Rule-Aid. So that's the way that works. Damon Benning, everybody. Give it up for Damon. Nebraska football on the radio, of course, and this is his home studio, Monday through Friday, Bird at Sports, and of course on 5 Monday locally as well. Damon, we appreciate it. Coming from practice at West Side. As soon as you sit down, we'll throw a question to you, because we're going to everybody else.
Just in time.
Right? So, obviously, we talked a lot about excitement and the way people feel. We were out for my wife's birthday last week, and the waiter stopped us and said, I'm so excited. I take off all the games, all the Saturdays. Think about that. The waiter who makes a lot of his money on the weekend is taking off because it's exciting. What's your feeling, though? Because you usually are pretty good about curbing that excitement as someone who does a 5-day-a-week radio show. What's your feeling?
Yeah, I get it. I totally see why people are excited. Most of what Coach Rule says that I think is the key is he talks about football like the things you want out of everyday life, right? Maximizing, staying in the moment, making sure that you have concern for your teammate. And every time he talks about culture, when he talks about it in terms of football, you actually think that he's talking about life. So I think, people feel motivated listening to him, even though because sometimes we can't tell if he's talking about how to go to work the next day or how to play football. And it's something that we all can relate to. So I get the excitement, and I've had to kind of chill, right? You know me, you guys know me as well as anybody. And sometimes I have to check myself, right? Just to make sure, like, man, this seems kind of too good to be true. What's up, KB? But I get it, and it doesn't have anything to do with who's down there playing. It's all about like just watching adults be full-fledged adults, right? Like it's a big boy program, and he's got big boy aspirations, and he hasn't shied away from them.
We were going to have him on green here, but because of stuff with his family, he couldn't make it. But he did send a video. I had to make sure that Damon was here first before we played the video. This is Amon Green sent this along with the helmet as part of our auctions as well.
Hey everyone, how you doing? It's Amon Green. Sorry I couldn't be there, but I was able to get a helmet donated to the event that is going on today for Giant and Jet Rodgers. So I hope everyone has a great time. Enjoy the helmet, and please, don't let Damon Benning talk too much. He talks too much. Maybe 30 seconds. That's about it. All right? Have a good time and go Big Brenden.
That's why we had to wait.
That's cute.
I'm just going to throw this out to
Nothing to
anybody.
do with that, David, by the way. Just so
Hey, you guys, count the words per minute. That was about 2.
I'm just going to throw this out to anybody. There's been a lot of positivity so far. But if we're going to pick one position group that you're most worried about, what would it be? And I'll just throw it out to you.
With the guy with the biggest muscles.
I would say, just the linebacker position right now. I think
Javin getting hurt.
Javin getting hurt. There's a lot of energy coming out of Shavers. There's a lot of talent there. The linebacker position requires a lot of reps, kind of like offensive line. And in the Big Ten, it's a different position because it's a very physical position. So, I think what we've got right now looks good. If somebody does go down, we worry a little bit about that. So, for me, it'd be the linebacker position.
Is there one out other than that you guys have? Is there one that you guys have?
For me, it's special teams.
Just overall the whole thing?
Yeah, like
Kicker, punter.
Yeah, knowing Tristan Alvano as well as I do, and Whole son is there. walking on as a kicker. And
He kicked well when we were up there.
listen, he's got a hammer.
He was killing today.
Like he's got a big time. He's got a big boy leg. So we'll see if he can handle the pressure. And the return game, like it's just weird. Like we fast forward to place kicking, but we got to get better in the return game. Where obviously the Jettlers and kickoffs, they've neutralized that return game, but punts, punt return, like you got to be able to take advantage of that because special teams, it's like stealing.
But we're used to sharing.
I know that's what I said. You guys like brothers.
What I would say is, I think it's going to be critical that the running back position is solid to take a little bit of pressure off this young quarterback. I know that being a freshman, it's typically a 5-star is coming in with a certain kind of cachet, but there's going to be an adjustment period for a freshman, and having a solid running game can really take a lot of pressure. So I'm looking for the coach to probably lean on that a little bit more, and hopefully the running backs hold on to the ball.
You mentioned a freshman. How much did you play with Tommy that 92 year? Did you play much with him?
Yeah, I was a redshirt sophomore that season.
What would you say was the hardest process for him coming in there as a freshman, taking over? And you guys had a good record. I think you were like 4-1 when you took over.
Yeah, probably more than anything. You almost, I don't want to say put reins on him and kind of like pull him back a little bit, but I mean, he when he came in, he was one of those guys. And sometimes this can be a strength, sometimes it can be a weakness. He didn't know what he wasn't supposed to be able to do. And so he would just go out and do it. And he did some stuff that was, kind of like there was wow type plays. That big bomb pass against Colorado in that Halloween night game. He had a touchdown where he kind of launched himself from the 5-yard line into the end zone against Missouri in that first start. But there's kind of like a quarterback's got to be able to control things. In the sense that they got to be able to control the game itself. And sometimes that you get over to the sideline, instead of making that miraculous pass, you just run out of bounds and you throw it away and kind of live and fight another day. And I think that was something that you saw develop in Tommy over time. It's kind of you get a situation where you can get some boom or bust kind of plays. And Tommy was one of the special athletes who most of the time it was a boom play, not a bust. But that was one of the things where, like I said, it's just he sometimes didn't know what he wasn't supposed to be able to do, so he would go out and still do things. And like I said, most of the time it worked out, some of the times it didn't. But then you saw that by the time he was a junior, he was a senior. And those were the kind of, that was the kind of development that you saw that allowed, I thought, Nebraska to kind of get over that last little hump and become the team that you did see, say, in '95.
I think one thing that would be good for these guys to answer that you and I have talked about is it's hard as a young quarterback to command the huddle, right? Like you gotta be able to look guys that look like this, right? In the eye.
Has that changed now that we don't huddle as much?
No, but listen, I'm just telling you, like that offensive line has 130 starts, and you got a pup coming in there saying, hey, Z-zip pro right, 42Z slam, and you guys got to break the huddle and say, yeah, I believe in this young buck. Like it's easy to command and be a leader of people that you're better than, but when you got a veteran, big-time offensive line group potentially like they do, that does some things. Like, how do you guys know that those quarterbacks are winning you over once they call the play and you break the huddle?
I thought Tommy was a little bit singular in that regard, just because I remember during that, Osborne held him out for he played, but he didn't start during that non-conference portion of the season, and Osborne was kind of worried about him going out there. And something goes wrong, does it break his psyche? You got a young kid. How's he going to do it? I thought most of us were sitting back going, geez, when is he going to freaking start this game? I just remember early on he had that confidence, that command type presence, and you don't see that much. And I don't know, that's one of those things as far as the young guys go. You either have it or you don't. And I thought a guy like Brooke had it. There was other quarterbacks I played with who did have that. Other players who had that. Lawrence was a kid who, he had that coming in. It was just like, just give me the ball, open me up the guards.
I think what's unique to this position now is Tommy was in a system where it required him to be an athlete. And in the systems we see now, the option game is, there's a little bit of that, some of the plays that are designed for the quarterback, but the game has changed completely when it comes to what is the quarterback required to do and be effective. And I think in this system, like Damon was talking, or actually Clester was talking about, putting him in a situation to where he can rely on everybody else, not make mistakes, go back there and do the things that he does well. That's the unique thing that I think separates him in that room right now, is that he has the ability to, not be, not making those plays where a younger kid, trying to take a chance or a risk throwing the ball, he's going to throw it away and he'll live to fight another day. But I think that there lies the difference between, Tommy in the system that he was in and the quarterbacks in the system that they're in now. Tommy was required to be physical with his game, and we threw the ball, but not a whole lot. So a lot of it was relying upon the system itself. If you had one cog in that system, it would break down. And so a lot of times it really wasn't Tommy. But like we've all talked about, Tommy was very unique. He would make plays, even though the play had broken down.
Something Clester mentioned earlier. Something that Clester mentioned earlier was, from the top down, right, from president to chancellor, we got a new AD. How much have things changed around the department with the new AD, with Troy Dannon? How much have things changed? Because meeting him and having a conversation with him, you can see how he can inspire you. He's a fired up kind of guy.
Yeah, he is, and everybody has a different way to skin a cat. I think Troy is very much geared towards being the coach's AD, if you will, and it's structured in a kind of a bottom-down type of system. There's no really right or wrong way to do it. I mean, he has a tremendous amount of experience. He has a wealth of knowledge around the game, not only the business side, but also the AD kind of hat that you have to wear. So it's different. There's no doubt about that. But with the amount of information coming at him, I thought he's done a really good job thus far. He's put the coaches in a position to let them go and coach. And as that is happening, there's a lot of changes that are going on within the game of football, the game of athletics.
I like the fact that he comes in kind of like Coach Butler in his perspective, like a blank slate. He doesn't. He's cognizant, but he doesn't have to worry about, well, it's been like this, or we do it like this. It's a fresh set of eyes and a time where you need a fresh set of eyes. You'll see a lot more revenue streams opened up because I think he'll be open to more ideas, right? He's not as grandfathered in to the old way of doing things. And I actually think it sounds weird with all these old heads up here that it should be like, well, we used to do it like this, but as you know, I mean, you had to do a lot of heavy lifting for fundraising. You want a new, fresh perspective where you're not afraid to, well, what's such and such gonna say? Hey, listen, I gotta be good for business, and business is always open. And I think that's one of the things that Dannon's been best at.
It's kind of a dirty word right now, but you almost have to be a politician as an AD now. Because you're doing so much, not just fundraising.
You have to be malleable, right? You gotta do it kind of.
You gotta go to the legislature. I mean, there's so many things going on. You've got the Senate's doing stuff with NIL. I mean, there's so much going on. I want to ask you about, so the wide receiver position, obviously the wingback. It used to be you had to worry about the guys who were coming in as recruits, right? Now, you can be here a couple of years and they recruit over you by bringing a transfer. Isaiah Nader comes in, Jamal Banks comes in. Thoughts on that and that process where you have some young wide receivers that earned their bones last year, but now they're kind of backups to new guys.
Yeah, it's definitely a new day because when they recruited us back then, they couldn't get receivers. If you guys go back and look at the depth charts when we played, we were all a makeshift bunch. I came in as a quarterback, there was running backs, we just all kind of got together and we're scared to lose our position, so we work really hard. But NIL and the portal have really changed the game. And, you know, I really, at this point, don't know what to think about it. It's gonna, I want to see what's gonna happen here over the next few years. The thing that's really gonna be interesting to me overall is we are right now still in a honeymoon phase of what's going on down there. I want to see what's gonna happen when some adversity hits, especially with the leadership. You know, you got a brand new AD, pretty new coach, chancellor. Everybody's new, and everything is just not going to go to plan. I'm telling you. And I would like to see if cooler heads are going to prevail, and then everybody's going to be patient and let this thing play out. That's ultimately what I want to see. But back on the receiver thing. I like healthy competition because the cream is going to rise to the top. You know, the young guys are there, they have an advantage of knowing the system, and it's up to you to take advantage of it. I think we need to get back to competition because when guys feel like they got it made, they get a little bit complacent. And with a program who's been in the doldrums like we've been, it's time to open up the gates and let guys compete. It's time for people to compete and get back to when we were there. I don't know about these guys. They were pretty set in their positions. They had established themselves. But I'm going to tell you what, at those skilled positions, if you got hurt, you wasn't showing up, it's a good chance that they're going to replace you. So.
What do you think about, though, sorry, just going off. Is it dead? Just going off. Hello?
Hello. The big thing, talking about changes, 18 teams in this Big Ten. The way the process works, 9 conference games, 3 non-conference games. What do you think the philosophy should be for a team like Nebraska in terms of putting together their schedule? Because it seems like a lot of teams are going to be trying to avoid playing those other Power 4 teams because of how difficult the schedule is in conference.
And I've seen that go both ways. And I've seen teams use different philosophies with that in terms of you go with a little bit of an easier scheduling for the non-conference to pad that record a little bit. And I'm not, if you're in a conference like the Big Ten or the SEC, historically that does not hurt you that much. On occasion you'll have those teams where they're kind of when it was a 4-team playoff and you're one of those bubble teams.
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah,
right?
The thing that's going to be interesting is that, I mean, you have had teams where they go out and play a really quality schedule. I mean, you know, whether you love them or hate them, Notre Dame's a team that most years they've got a schedule that's designed to be a good schedule. I mean, they always played USC, they always played Michigan, they always played Michigan State. They always had a good schedule throughout top to bottom. I mean, you have the traditional teams in there like Navy that a lot of times weren't as good. But for the most part, it's like they played a fairly tough schedule, and I think that did help them a lot. I think when you get to the point now where the direction you're going, where you're going to have these huge conferences, and you're going to see the SEC and the Big Ten essentially kind of ruling the college football world, you're going to already have 9 teams on that schedule that are very good. If you schedule one good non-conference, there's 10 teams on your schedule that you got to prove yourself against. I don't think padding that schedule a little bit with kind of the traditional group of 5 teams is going to hurt you all that much, at least in the direction things are going.
Well, I think you're going to see a lot more teams. They're going to take chances because we're moving into a world that you're no longer going to have undefeated teams. It's going to be an NFL model, AFC, NFC. You're going to have divisional playoffs, right? You're going to have conference championships. You're going to have teams that are going to have 2 and 3 losses that are going to be playing for the national championship. And the money that's involved and the parity that's out there now, you're going to find a lot of good competition in teams that are going to challenge really good teams early. These week 0 games, you're seeing more and more, I think just from the money draw, and to get that kind of money for both those universities, they're willing to take that chance. And so, the days of losing one game and your season's over, which was kind of like when we played, and you lost one game, your chances of making the national championship were slim and none. Now you're going to see teams potentially winning a national championship with 3 losses.
Yeah, you and I worked together forever, and I think the thing that's probably the most disappointing. I'm not down on NIL. I'm not down on the transfer portal. I just wish before we went to super conferences, we would have had a little more uniformity, right? Are you playing 8 conference games? Are you playing 9? The Big 12 panicked. I told you that when we were working together, when the Big 12 said, oh my gosh, we need a championship game, I'm like, hey, don't panic, right? Just because it's Baylor and TCU,
Yep.
and it's not Texas and Oklahoma, don't schedule a conference championship game. So now that we've gone to these power conferences within a non-uniformity in conference games, it's a problem, right? Are you playing 8? Are you playing 9? Are you playing 10? Are you sharing the revenue within your conference? And so I think the thing that not bugs me the most, but the thing that I would do if I was scheduling now, if you have to run the gamut and play 8, 9, 10 conference games, if the fans will pay for or be a part of or support non-con games that aren't super sexy. I was going to get to Colorado in week 2 to come to Lincoln. But if people are willing to support it, I wouldn't schedule a ton in the non-con. I maybe would give it the 1 game because the conference is a gauntlet. But the schedule makers, i.e. the administration, has to know that you guys are okay with not, Ali Frazier every night, right? You may get, I don't even know who you play now. It's North Dakota. Who's the bye game?
Well, and that's
who are the bye game teams? There's only so many of those teams.
It's going to be G5 teams.
It's going to be tough.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of
right?
Yeah, there's not a lot of cupcakes.
That's what I'm saying.
Nebraska was on the ropes to North Dakota.
Listen, if you're Colorado, are you tickled that you're playing North Dakota State?
No, he said
Coach
Sanders said no.
Right? Over the last few years, we've lost to Northern Illinois.
Troy.
We've lost to Georgia Southern.
Troy.
North Dakota took us to the wire.
Yeah, that North Dakota game, that was a hell of a pass and a hell of a catch to get out of the shadow of that end zone and secure that win. It's, the days of that's a guaranteed cupcake win.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of
We are okay with the scheduling though.
Yeah.
I still think the model is going to go to that Power 4, and every other school is not going to have a chance to play. We're going to have a conference that's overseen by something other than the NCAA. The NCAA will still be around.
Right.
They'll make their money on basketball, and they'll still be in some of these developmental schools. Not to knock those at all. There'll be money for those schools. Those are going to be great opportunities in a day and age in a world where we live in, where if you're not developed right now, you're probably not going to play in a Power 4, right? Maybe in 2 years where you enter the portal, kind of like a Samari Toure type of situation. Sure. You'll be given a chance, and there'll still be money to be made by the conferences. But I think you're going to have a pool of teams. I don't know what the number is on that, right? But
We talked a lot about 60.
Yeah.
They include the Power
Right.
4 and then maybe Notre Dame.
But again, Notre Dame's got some. They're
They're going to be interesting.
They're going to be interesting. But again,
Guess what? They can't get better than a 5.
They can't get better than 5 because they're not in the conference.
That's right.
Right. Which is going to make them start thinking. Before, I'm going to give you a heads up now. If you want to ask a question, I'm going to ask them couple questions. If you have a question, just raise your hand. I'll bring the microphone to you. You can ask the guys a question. Give me your idea of a successful season for Nebraska in 2023.
Bowl game.
Just a bowl game?
Bowl game. Bowl game or bust. We haven't been to a bowl game in 7 years. When I was being recruited by Nebraska, one of the first things that came out of the recruiter's mouth was, we made 27 straight bowl games.
Back to 1968.
That's right. I think bowl game for us, or bust. Outside of that, I think it's, to look at a team that takes another step in all 3 phases. And I think, back to your point with Coach Rule, I haven't been around this program since I left with Coach Osborne, where I've seen the amount of professionalism and the accountability that a program like Nebraska should have. So I applaud him in a big time way. And, you know, it's rules way or that.
Yeah. Rob?
Same, bowl game. It doesn't have to be a 10 or 11 win season. They just got to get to a bowl game and get that extra 3 weeks, month of practice, and you've got that next step you build on.
Clester?
Bowl game.
Ditto.
I mean, I'm gonna just second what Stai said. It's just incredible that I'm gonna call out our ages. We're all over 50, 50 and over, and it's unbelievable. I never thought it would be a day where we would look back and say Nebraska hasn't been to a bowl in 7 or 8 years. Like, that just wasn't fathomable back then, and that was the standard. I mean, that was the standard. Like, we just knew we were going to a bowl game. Then it became a standard to we're gonna play for the national championship team, championship game this year. We gotta win a bowl game, or we gotta get to a bowl game and win. And one more thing I feel like we need to do. We need to win a game we're not expected to win. We have to do that, right? Because that's when the belief really kind of sets in. So, bowl game, and we got to win an unexpected game.
Damon?
Yeah, I'm easy. Avoid a 3-game losing streak. And I think you got to upset somebody. Nebraska won't be relevant again in this conversation until they start winning again at home. So you need to circle all those games at home in red. That they have to be games that you win. I get the whole Nebraska nice thing. You've known forever. These guys for sure know. I'm cool with cheering as the winners go by, but they weren't winning. So it was cool to say, hey, cheer as the winners go by day. Now that folks are winning, I'm over the cheering. So you got to be better at home. You got to have a better home. You have to have a winning record at home. You have to avoid a 3-game losing streak. And it's not just a bowl game. I think 8's the floor for these guys, right? If you're 5-2 after the first 7 or whatever it is, you have to play meaningful games in November. Play meaningful games in November. And then you let the chips fall where they may. That's how you know. Listen, you got Wisconsin, you got USC, you have Iowa. Like, those things are down the stretch. And at some point, we'll get to where we stop conceding to Ohio State, but we're not there yet. So if you're just going to chop wood one swing at a time, defend your yard, avoid a 3-game losing streak, because if you look at the schedule, you know exactly what I'm saying, and get to the bowl game.
I'll add one more.
Okay.
He's so like this. He freaks me out just listening to him. He puts his traps on the table. All right, go ahead. You had one more.
Yeah.
Listen, that game. Listen, can we agree that game is must win?
Yeah.
We talk so much trash. That game is must win. I mean, this guy's boycott. Denver Post can't even come to practice. Like, they're a mess.
CBS.
Them too. Well, he can. Yeah, he's trending.
Anybody have a question you want to ask? Bring the microphone over, raise your hand. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
This guy went to Florida.
My face was painted half orange and blue at the championship game, so I'm recovering. But thank you for being here. My question is, if you're taking taking the transfer portal aside, what are the challenges recruiting from high school today than you had when you were being recruited in Nebraska? In terms of getting those 4- and 5-star talents.
Good question.
Well, taking the portal and NIL aside, all that. If you're going to talk about just taking the portal aside, NIL is a huge challenge. I would not want to be a coach in college football, which is amazing to me because years ago, college football coaches didn't want to coach in the pros because you're coaching a bunch of millionaires, you're managing men. Now it's kind of flipped. I can't imagine Coach Osborne dealing or even putting up with the environment that we're in now. But I think what separates you is winning tradition. The challenge for us is national recruiting, but we've always been a national recruiting recruiting school. I think Damon hit on it. This coaching staff, they put a lot of time and energy and invested in recruiting, and that includes Texas. We've been out of Texas for a long time. There's a tremendous pool of talent down there, and it's almost an overflow because you're only allowed to take so many student athletes with scholarships in the state of Texas, and then boom, there's leftovers. And so there's a tremendous pool of talent there. I always felt like national recruiting was a challenge, but then again, Nebraska has always been innovative. I think where we kind of set ourselves apart from other universities is our academics, and I'm hoping and praying that our student athletes are still looking at, and it's not just football, it's comprehensive, right? And then you have your resources. The amount of resources that Nebraska has is probably, I would say, top 5 in the country across the board. I don't care if you're talking about tennis, or you're talking about football, everything else in between. We have everything that a student athlete could ever want. And certainly with football, our new facility, the Osborne Legacy Complex, is 315,000 square feet of technology, everything wrapped into one. It's probably the best facility in the world. And I would go out there saying that. So the challenge would be, to me, is, and it boils down to that now. And Coach Rule and Troy have spoke to it. It is clear as day. We have to deal with it. And we have to take it on. And I think Nebraska's done a very good job. We've stayed above. We've been innovative with it. We've partnered now with 1890 as an athletic program. So that would be probably, to me, the biggest challenge.
A shot at Damon. Westside has the same facility as Nebraska.
It's pretty close.
Bishop Gorman's pretty close there too out there.
Vegas, yeah. Damon, question comes from Devin Stevens.
Hi, I'm Devin Stevens.
All right, go ahead. What's up, Dave? Real estate mogul.
So I'm kind of a nerd, so I've got like a lot of questions. I'm going to limit it to 3, if that's all right. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, there you go.
Okay. So I'm going to say number 1, who leads Nebraska in carries at the end of the season?
Emmett Johnson.
Okay. Number 2, who is a guy that we're not talking about right now, but in November we're going to look back and be like, wow, that dude's had a really good season.
Nate Borgacher.
Okay. And then this is for Brenden, and I'm sure you've told the story 1,000 times, and he's going to be here in 2 weeks. So 95 Orange Bowl, you get moved to left guard, play against Warren Sapp. Can you kind of just talk about some stories of that game and reminisce a little bit about that?
Before you answer though, were you happy about moving?
I was vexed. Certainly when Coach asks you to do something, you don't argue with him. But the rationale behind it, and then kind of figuring, it was an opportunity for me, selfishly, to see how good I was. So there lies the conflict of interest. But Warren, that whole entire defense, outside of just Warren, was probably the fastest defense we had ever seen collectively. Us front 5, and then as a team as a whole, it was pro speed over there. It started with Warren Sapp, who was, when he first came into college, he was a tight end. A guy named Dwayne Johnson gets hurt. Boom, they said, hey, Warren, he played a little defensive tackle, and in high school, he's put him in 3, and the rest was history.
Dude, Dwayne sucked.
Yeah.
He had really bad shoulders, right? Multiple shoulders.
I don't know what he had. All I knew is that when 94 came into the game, it was like, all right, I got a break here on this guy.
Now he's a billionaire.
That's all right. And again, I'm not saying he hasn't done well. I'm just saying he wasn't Warren Sapp.
Speaking specifically about Warren and his addition to Colorado, I thought it was brilliant from Deion Sanders' perspective. I've been watching Warren for a lot of years. I mean, he has not failed in running his mouth a lot, but on social media, I've watched him coach, I've watched him talk, I've watched him motivate, and I've seen him coach now. I've seen some films of it. Think about what he does from a recruiting perspective. Not only you're going to get recruited and coached by one of the best all-time college, and if not NFL, 3 techniques.
He's in Canton.
Yep, he's in Canton. And not only that, but you're going to get a guy that he's fresh. Even though he's our age, he's fresh and he's highly motivated. So that guy, he's a huge addition for them, in particular from a recruiting standpoint. So,
Yeah, the NFL Network did those pieces where they would have the pro players work with the guys coming out of college, and Warren did defensive line, and Mike Irvin did wide receivers, and Deion did cornerbacks. You really can see of course, you can coach in those situations. Anybody else have a question? Richard?
Okay, so my question is, sorry. So my question is, we've had a lot of big time recruits come in here, for long term, blah, blah, blah. They've been okay. Is Dylan Wright all of them? Is he legit?
He's legit.
You think he's legit?
So here's one of the things I think Damon or Clester hit on, a 5-star. If you look at the pool of high school players, 5-stars, you're looking at about less than 0.5% of all the athletes in high school are 5-star players. And when you're dubbed a 5-star, typically, if you don't get hurt, you're probably going pro. And I think outside of his physical skills, talked a little bit about this earlier, what's between the ears, he's had, I was talking with Dominic about it, he grew up in a household where when Rob and I were playing, they came out with a video game, John Madden, it was called Coach, and it had Bill Cowher's face on it, right? You could build a team, you could structure offensive plays, you could put together defenses, all this, and you can actually build the entire complexity of the game, and he grew up on that, right? So learning the game early, and then some of the coaching and the maturation that he experienced early in his years, I mean, going back to when he was in 6th and 7th grade. So the development, right, has happened much faster for a guy like Dylan. And there are other guys that are like that as well. Some younger guys on our team, I'll point one out, Xander Rigoroli, he's out of Vegas. Yep. He was coached by his offensive line coach 14 years in the league, right? So early on, he would play football, and going into his 3rd year, the kid has had like 15 games under his belt, right? And so you get a kid like that who comes in, all of a sudden, he has this development way ahead of a guy like, let's say, Bricks, who played in Iowa, played against decent competition, but didn't necessarily have that kind of development early on with his feet and his hands and just understanding the game. So with Dylan, again, I truly believe, just watching him through spring ball, some of the things that he does in practice, the ability to make decisions, within 2 seconds, and then figuring out, okay, I'm going to live to fight another day. Those are the type of guys you want throwing the ball for you in hand.
The only thing so there's a pro and there's a con to this 5-star thing. As you can see what's happening now in college football, if things don't go right, you can go into the portal and you can make big money. We saw that Dylan was committed to Georgia, okay? And we see where that Georgia program is right now. They are basically who we were. And
#1 preseason.
I'm just hoping that Coach Rule puts him again in positions where he's going to be successful, and that he sees that he's an integral part in getting Nebraska back on track. Because if things go left, as we can see, kids will go into the portal and they will leave. And then what does that do for Nebraska? So sometimes I'm very hesitant and putting all of our eggs in one basket in this one kid. So that is one of the things that keep me from drinking the Kool-Aid, is I love to take a wait and see approach. Obviously, I'm very optimistic, but I have to take a wait and see approach because like us all, we've all been hurt at the end of the year because something did not go right. So I would like to see Coach Rule let him play ball and put him in position, not make him robotic, let him be who he is, and communicate and talk to him. Because when that doesn't happen, again, these kids today, a little bit different.
Remember, not just Georgia, but Ohio State recruited, Ryan Day recruited. 5 of the top 10 programs offered him at quarterback as their #1 quarterback. So if he's not real, a lot of smart guys were wrong.
The thing that I thought was interesting about Dylan, whether you like it or not, played at 4 different high schools, 4 different coaches, 4 different places. If you look at his productivity, it was essentially damn near the same every place he went. He was basically 30 touchdowns and 3 interceptions every single year, freshman year through his senior year in high school. To throw the number of variables at a kid, to have that productivity be that good and not change year to year like that level of high level consistency, like you said, you don't have to like the fact that he went to 4 different high schools in different states over the time he was in high school.
So did Taylor Martinez.
Yeah, but it speaks
And
a
was
lot.
MVP at 2 of those tests.
That's right. But but that level of consistency is, that's a hell of an outlier.
You're being very positive about the situation. It's all
It is, but I do agree with you. It's one of those, you got to temper things a little bit. You don't put anything in one basket, and that jump from high school to that next level, no matter how good you are. It's a big jump. It is a big jump.
Damon, I'm curious with your thoughts on this. Think about the environment they're in now with the portal, unlimited, right? Depending on the room, quarterback. If you have 3 or 4 guys in that room, this is what coaches have to worry about. You got number 1 and 2 going at it. Number 2 is number 2, obviously, at the end of the deal. He's probably going to lead. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but you better have number 3 and 4. Think about how much of a difficult task that is to not only recruit to that, but also retain to that. And I'm curious about your thoughts on the retention side of things.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point, because I think, and the cool thing about this panel that he assembled, obviously, Michael's pretty smart, so Clester has a lot of insight into Kalen. Spent a lot of time around him. I've coached against him. But he makes a good point, because what happens is, and we're all guilty of it. It's like, oh, what do you wait to name, Dylan the starter for? Oh, we knew. So I think there's 3 things in that answer. Number 1, as you guys know, when you get the temperament in the quarterback room, right, and it's no disrespect to the O-line, because they're second. But when you get the temperament in the quarterback room right, you give your team a chance, right? So let's just take Dylan first. Number 1, he's got an infectious personality. Super high ceiling. He's very smart, very others-centered. You get 2 other guys, and H2 or Harvard and Kalen, right? So with Harvard, he's very appreciative isn't the word, but you don't have to babysit him. He goes to work. He knows he needs to improve. He's a I'll do whatever I can guy. Whatever you need, coach. Nobody believed in me. 2 years ago, I couldn't even go to quarterback meetings. Coach Rule, you staff, I'm committed to you. So you don't have to worry about that. Number 3, you get a guy like Danny Caleb, right? Who
Elite 11.
Listen, his ability to compete and deal with things when they're not always perfect, right? Is that safe? He's like Teflon Don. I'm not saying he's like the consummate competitor, but he's not easily swayed, right? Because it hasn't always been rainbows and butterflies for him. So when you put those 3 guys in a room with the culture that Nebraska has, and how you get Glenn Thomas to like love on you, and Sack calling plays, who is like kind of no nonsense, and you get that blend, they've got the quarterback room right. Then you double down and you put that against what the offensive line is doing with their experience and their maturity. No disrespect to D-line, because there's not one defensive guy up here. I'm a defensive coordinator, but I'm not dumb enough to think. When you get the O-line right, because they always move as one. Always. These guys have been friends for 25 years, and it's not changing. Doesn't matter where you are on the depth chart. They move as one. So they're a given. But when the quarterbacks and
math was never Damon's strong.
in this day and age, when quarterbacks are very particular and they transfer, and it's always what about me, and you've been propped up your whole life, and you get the Elite 11 stuff. This room is really, really good in terms of supporting one another. So they've given themselves a chance. So every time you hear Coach Rule talk about, and don't kid yourself, yeah, they may have had some inklings or insight or whatever, and they're like, yeah, Dylan has the highest ceiling. I know he's going to be number 1. But you know what took so long? Is because they weren't going to compromise. So he may have been the best of the bunch, but was he the best version of himself? And that staff is really, really good about not conceding. Because it's not about being the best quarterback in that room necessarily. It's, am I the best version of who I'm capable of being? And once those check marks are hit, then Coach Rule is able to say, hey, you know what? You're my guy. And that's the difference, right? Like, Mike Grant could have not easily, had a chance to hold off Tommy. I know what you're saying, but what was Coach Osborne waiting for? He was waiting for him to hit those leadership benchmarks, kind of that Teflon benchmark, kind of where he could hang in there and hear some things that weren't always positive benchmark. It's not about the physical talents. It's about when whatever hits the fan, am I capable of hanging in there, and do my teammates want to be better for me? And so it's not as easy as saying, well, duh, you named Dylan, starting quarterback. There's benchmarks that got to be hit, and that's the kind of coach that you guys want to cheer for. And I'm going to tell you this: the temperament in that quarterback room is spot on. There is no animosity. There is no, I'm not the guy. It's like, okay, collectively, even as individuals, how can we think to get the job done? And it's crazy how they did it, because he flipped the roster overnight without flipping the roster. And he's kind of old and kind of young, but that quarterback room is spot on. Spot on.
What Stai was talking about is that most places it won't be. It'll be more like you had a few years ago, where as soon as Jimmy didn't get the job, he was going to Oregon State. So that's going to happen in a lot of places. And you got to have you got to recruit a quarterback every year. Every year, right?
I'm with you.
Every year.
I agree, right? Like, we've seen some really, really talented guys come and go. We've seen some really talented guys that had to switch positions. I'm with you. Get a step.
Whatever the room is more important. We talked about it.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Anybody else want to ask a question? Right over there.
I guess it was like, who's the best? Let's say Rayola gets hurt, who's the backup? And there's the expectations of the season change if he gets hurt.
I think just with the experience, I think Heinrich comes in. I think he's another year developed. His throwing motion, watching him in spring, he reverted a couple times and kind of sidearmed some things. But for a long time, Heinrich, the lights weren't blinking fast enough for him, and I think they're blinking just fine now. And if Dylan does go down, you've got Heinrich, and then Danny's, I think, in the wings. Now, this transfer, I really don't know much about him. Yeah, I don't really know much about him.
He's a winner.
He's a winner.
He's a winner.
Right, exactly. So
I think if Nebraska had their druthers, and this is at risk of being in a headlock between those pythons, but I think they would love to redshirt Kalen, but they know he's the next best quarterback. That's what I think. So how they negotiate that, I'm not sure. But from like an upside standpoint, I think DK is the next most talented. And as he continues to grow, I don't know, man. He's pretty good.
Harvard would make a great Taysom Hill.
And
He's a bigger, stronger Taysom Hill.
yeah, no, I think they're going to use Heinrich.
Yeah,
Absolutely, he's going to be a part of the offense, and I think that was a part of the kind of the psychology going into spring. He didn't want to lose Heinrich. So hey, listen, we're gonna.
He's kind of the poster child.
And if he wants to go to the
selfless.
pros, I mean, do you think he'll be a quarterback in the pros? Probably not.
You have the most unique insight into Kalen.
Actually, I have the most unique insight to Heinrich.
All right.
No, he called him and asked him how to run 300 hurdles.
No.
Incredible athlete.
Full disclosure, I'm good friends with Rod Harburg.
Okay.
We talked all year last year because he was trying to figure out the previous year what he should do. So we became really close. Obviously, I'm not going to disclose our conversations, but it was a really tough time, I know, under Coach Frost that he had. And it didn't get much better under Mickey. So I was trying to be positive with him through the whole deal. But we've talked a lot, to be honest with you. So
Who by choice runs the 300-meter hurdles? By choice? Like, is it the last race? Like, you're running out. Any other questions? Anybody?
Yeah, got one over there. Oh, there's one here.
As I'm walking, I'm gonna ask everybody, how long do you think it is before Damon cries when Caleb comes in the game and he's on the radio and has to call Caleb making a play? You think he stops in the middle of the game and cries? Who will put their hand up?
About 60 seconds.
You all right, Butch?
I'm going to shift gears for you guys for just a second. We all respect the heck out of you and what you've done for Nebraska and how you're talking about other players. Talk about your kids and what they're doing right now in college sports. I know that all of you, I believe, have a college athlete right now. So talk about them if you would, please.
We do, actually.
Go ahead, Stai. Well, mine are done. My last one, she ended up blowing her shoulder out twice in 6 months and had a bad knee and a bad experience really overall with leadership at the school that she went to. So she decided, you know what, I'm going to hang it up, Dad. And I was pretty bummed. But yeah, Bryce played in Ohio. He was recruited by Jimmy Burrow and Frank Solich. Had a great experience there. Went through the COVID period, if you will. And then my oldest, she never was an athlete in college, but yeah, that's the deal.
So I got oldest daughter just graduated from, of all places, Florida State, was on the rowing team. Went from being a high school swimmer to a college rower. Son, who's up at Augustana in Sioux Falls playing football. Although I will say this, he completely and utterly shamed the family by being a defensive lineman. Still trying to figure that one out. And then got a younger daughter, who's a senior in high school, is a wrestler, and is planning on wrestling in college. Where
they're good wrestler.
She's solid. She's solid. So, but yeah, she's still trying to decide where she wants to go. So.
We're going to Clester about 15 minutes. Go ahead.
I got to give out a few plugs real fast. I got my brother here, Silvo. A lot of people may know who he is, but he is now the new assigner for all the referees in the Metro for basketball. Silvo's here.
No pressure.
Zero pressure job right there.
And then my nephew Cedric just graduated playing basketball, and he was playing basketball in Chicago. I can't even say the name of the college, but he's now currently have an agent and he's looking to play basketball overseas. So Cedric Johnson. We got Melissa, that's my wife right there. And then Kai, so listen, Kai, I need you Husker fans to understand something, right? I had 3 sons that didn't go to Nebraska, right? But I got one more shot. So y'all better be nice to me. Oh, actually, we may have 2 more shots. My oldest son, Clester II, he played at Wyoming, he graduated. He was one of Josh Allen's little receiver. He's living in Denver, living his best life. My son Kay has been with the Seahawks for the last 3 years. He's currently a free agent, and he's looking at a few teams that may bring him in. You guys know y'all know that process. I'm talking to agents for him, trying to make sure they're doing their job. And then my son Keegan Johnson, who initially went to Iowa. Everybody know what that offense looked like. He decided to.
It's like playing wide receiver for Nebraska.
Keegan thought it was best that his talents go somewhere else. So he's now at K-State. He's starting a receiver at K-State. He's fully healthy, and we're looking to have a big year. I think K-State is going to have a pretty good team this year. And then, again, I got Kai Johnson back there. So.
I've got a daughter who's at Wesleyan playing basketball, just getting ready to start her 2nd season. I've got a son who's at Nebraska, who, for whatever the reason, got a shout out today in the press conference. He's doing well. I always joke, Michael gives me a hard time because I give Sean Callahan a hard time a lot. And I always joke that, like, there's a couple guys, Clester in particular, Danny Noonan, Hoskinson. There's a lot of guys that had, Toby Wright, there's a lot of guys that had younger sons that were being recruited. And I hate to give Clester any credit because I almost didn't make it to Lincoln because of him when he was my recruiting host. But he was a guy like that I plugged into early. I mean, Caleb was like in middle school, and I would say, "Hey, how did you do this?" Or, when I was reintroduced to Rob and his kids, when I was coaching Ryan on defense, and I would say, hey, how did you do this? Like, one of the cool things about us being up here, and I'll get to Caleb in a second, is guys weren't afraid to share. Hey, this worked for me, this didn't work for me, pay attention to this, don't pay attention to that. So for somebody that's supposed to come across as like kind of being very secure, I wasn't. Super insecure when it came to Caleb, because he was my oldest son and I had never been through it before, so I was always taking notes. And I remember Brenden came to Pius and we watched basketball, and he sat with me in the top row, and I'm picking his brain, and I'm sure he just wants to watch the game. And I should watch the game because my kid's playing basketball, but I'm mad that my kid's playing basketball. And you went through that, right? So I say all that to say, to watch him flourish when I was afraid to have him be all in on Nebraska or all in on football or all in on this. I wanted him to be his own man. To watch what's going on now and to see him function at a really, really high level, I'm not gonna cry. I got a younger guy. My 14-year-old is a freshman at Westside who thinks he's gonna be better than his brother. So I always like watching the videos and stuff of Kai, and especially knowing Keegan and Cade when they tried to run down Clester Jr., which was great, right? Like, it's a very competitive household, and I have a 6-year-old, so I'm not gonna get out of the house until most of you that are maybe sitting in here. I'm gonna be at home a long time. She's a terror, but it's been fantastic. I think my favorite thing about doing what I'm doing is actually being a parent, so I can appreciate the question.
I remember we had on Monte Cristo, and Damon just asked him constantly, how do you make time for this kid?
Another guy who's knows I stole.
How do you make time for all those guys? Just, especially when you have that many kids all playing different sports. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Wyatt.
Hello.
Hi, Wyatt.
Same dessert question, but I got, so speaking of Colorado, because I'll be at the game, and I'm excited about it, but I am curious about, with two linemen here, with their line, what do you expect their line to be with all those new players? And for a 5-star tackle, how good could he be for that first year?
The offensive line is interesting because you can have 4 guys that are average players and have a really good game, but you don't mesh well. The chemistry's not there. It takes a while to gel. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of snaps, and being able to communicate with somebody non-verbally, understanding that they're going to be there, know exactly kind of the rhythm, being all in tune with each other. So where I kind of circle with Colorado, it's like what Dion has done. He's kind of revolutionized today's day and game when it comes to flipping rosters. And you might have some success, I think, in flipping a roster, but if you look in the NFL, free agency is one thing, but to be able to plug and play, and go from team to team, and try to build that chemistry, offensive line in particular is very difficult to do. And so again, you plug and play, you put all 5 guys that are really good in there. What happens if one guy goes down? Is the next guy up? Is he going to fit that chemistry? Is he going to fit that mold? So that'd be kind of my opinion. I think they got rich quick up front, and they went out and did what they had to do as far as improving that offensive line. But I think offensive line play is dependent upon how many guys you have behind that can plug and play, because you're going to have injuries.
I want to mention some of the people that are in the audience right now before we continue. Rachel Warren is Miss Nebraska. Give it up for 2024. She's going to help us in the action in Nebraska. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. Bringing the crown. Representative Don Bacon, who is a great contributor to the Jet Award Foundation, has been a great supporter. We appreciate him. We have some board members here as well. Denny Drake, who's one of the founders, along with Johnny Rodgers and Coach Reed, who your name is right here, 2 of the main founders of this organization. We wouldn't have it without them. We appreciate that. Rick Ruba, who's the auctioneer, will be doing that coming up as well. Rob Trebelko is here as well from Cox Communications, a new member of the board. And Mike Messerly, who does everything for us and helps out. And if you ever go to any concerts, being right all the time. So we appreciate all of you for making it happen. We appreciate you guys for doing this as well. Any last words before we get out of here and we get to the auction?
No, I want to thank everybody for, obviously supporting Nebraska, but most importantly, just for being, one of the reasons why I came to Nebraska was the people in general. Everybody's so down to earth. Everybody's willing to shake your hand, look you in the eyes. So that, coming from Southern California, coming from an environment, for me, that was one of the things that I cherish, when I got to Nebraska to this day. So I applaud all you for that. Looking forward to a great season.
It's going to be a fun year. I really am excited for this season. And like I said, I'm not looking for a 10-win season, a 12-win season. I just want to see that step forward. And it's been a while since I've looked at a coaching staff that I feel fairly confident there's going to be a step forward. I mean, the last several coaching staffs we've had in Lincoln, I don't know if they're going to take a step forward this year. It might be a step back this year. It's kind of a wild card. I've got a lot of faith in these guys. It's going to be a step forward. It might not be a huge step, but they're moving in a direction, and that's something I just haven't had a lot of faith in seeing under previous coaching staffs.
My biased view, I'm looking forward to seeing Caleb, Donovan Jones, Jalen Lloyd. I'm looking to see some Nebraska kids get back on the map because I really feel like we missed that. Nothing against you, Stai, because obviously you're an integral part of
Esperanza's finest.
It's been a long time since Nebraska kids have gone down and we all recognize who they are and have followed their careers, and it's just something special about a homegrown kid. I want to see that happening again. So I'm looking forward to those kids being back.
Come on, man. Last word, Damon Benning. You got a good solid 40 seconds.
A good solid 40 seconds. Listen, as being a part of the Husker Radio Network and getting a chance to love on these guys and have them support me, and to echo Clester's sentiment, I do think there's something to local homegrown. I do. It's a passionate fan base, and we're getting back to the point where the high schoolers are passionate about the direction of Nebraska. And the folks that are part of this room, we have representatives. I mean, this is a big deal. I mean, how often are you going to get, Don Bacon here, right? So, no, listen, I'm dead serious. So, that just lets you know the energy, the effort, and the fervor. And so, when Nebraskans take care of Nebraskans, and it has a chance to be really, really dangerous. I'm telling you, with the way that this staff moves and how they think collectively for the greater good, the more folks that we have that are locked in step, arm in arm, the better this university is going to be, and everybody matters.
Brenden, Stai, Dr. Rodgers, Clester, thank you very much. Appreciate it.